welcome back to the very final wrap-up for 2021, December wrap-up. There isn't much to say except that I did it. I finally finished the biography of Mao, and to tell you the absolute truth, today is actually January 4th, and I just finished this today. Like, I start work tomorrow on Wednesday, and for me that's when the new year starts, and I refuse to make this a January wrap-up read. No, I refuse. So I sat down and I worked really hard to finish this amazing biography of Mao. It's just one of those things where, like, for some reason I don't know, I just, like, even though I was loving it, for some reason I just couldn't push through it for some reason, and it just got to this point where I just want it to be done. And it's like one of those things, like, it doesn't mean you dislike it, it's just one of those things, it's just, you spend way too much time on something and you just want to get it, you just want to finish it. Like that beautiful piece of art, you know, that's a commission and you think you're done, but I don't know, your PhD dissertations, you spend 5 years working on your PhD, and by the end of it, even though you were so passionate about your project, you just want to get that over. Or when you have a final exam you've been studying for, and you're just so done studying, like, and you just want it to be done. You just want it to be done. And that's what this was for me. But I am so happy to have finally read through it. This biography of Mao, by Jung, Chang, or I don't know the actual pronunciation of her name, but it's so good, it's so amazing, it's fascinating. Mao is a piece of poop. I'm gonna say he's a man that, I don't even know how to describe him. A piece of crap, basically. Like, he is gutless, worthless, has no spine, hides behind people. He has a tendency that if something goes well, he will take credit for it. If something doesn't go well, he will blame someone else for it. I was astonished by the similarities in personality between the former American president and Mao. Just this use of power and fear to get people to do what you want them to do. Again, blaming people if anything goes wrong in your policy, but definitely taking the credit when something does go well. And just this lack of any discernible care for anyone around you, whether they're loyal, I don't want to use the word subjects, but, you know, people loyal to you, whether that's the populace, the people you work with, his own family, the number of children he just left to die, for example, is just astonishing. And this book was absolutely astonishing. It's so well written, and what I like about it, so it's thick. I mean, the book itself is about 800 pages, but it's actually only 618 pages. The last 200 pages is an extensive list of references, a list of people that were interviewed, both, you know, just general scholars on the American side, but also scholars on the Chinese side. But what was very much impressive was the amount of interviews the authors did with people who actually worked with Mao, under Mao, who witnessed Mao directly, both on the Chinese side and the foreign diplomats and whatsoever and whatnot. And it's absolutely astonishing. And the book is so easy to read. It's so smooth. It's well presented. There's never a moment where you feel like, oh, that I don't really understand that too much. I should probably Wikipedia that. There was never a moment where I felt like I needed extra clarification on an event. I thought it was well presented, so well presented. The only part where I would say I started to fall fall back or slow down was when it became when Mao was trying to go more so on a global stage, because at that point there's so many politics from different countries that are introduced that some of them I'm familiar with, others that I'm not. But and and for me it was more like it slowed me down only because I was like, wait, I would like to refresh my memory on, say, the Cuban Missile Crisis and things like that. Che Guevara, who so famous, but now now I just don't remember if he was a good guy or a bad guy, or I think he started off a good guy and ended up a bad guy, and I just don't remember at all. But there were little moments like that. But in general, I never felt like, oh, who was that again, or what was, the author mentions this topic but doesn't describe it, so now I need to go to Wikipedia. There was never anything like that, so it was very, very well written. And it's just, yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it goes from Mao, from the very, very beginning, the age 0, all the way to his death, and it just describes his rise along with the rise of communism. I was absolutely fascinated by the fact that Mao was never actually a communist. He did not create the Communist Party, contrary to what many believe. He did not create the Communist Party. In fact, the Communist Party did not like him. They wanted to kick him out. They did not want him to take any part. They did not like him. They were actually embarrassed by him. They thought he was a terrible, terrible commander. They thought he was quite dumb. He had no idea what he was doing. But he just fell. What was interesting was that he just fell so much under the favor of the Russians, and the Russians knew that they could control him and manipulate him. They knew that he was a good personality, to someone who would kind of fulfill this sort of dictator kind of personality, and that's what they wanted, to rule the Communist Party. So fascinating. I learned so much. It goes into his school days, his initial interactions with communism, him discovering that there was a chance at power for this, which really what basically was his only purpose in life. He just wanted to, it's not even that he wanted to make a name for himself, but he wanted to create a world that he could live in. And that was, but the thing is that he only cared about his life in that world. He didn't care about anyone else. So it's not even creating a name for himself. It's just creating the world of Mao, basically, which is incredibly fascinating. So it leads into that. It leads to, so again, beginnings of the creation of the Communist Party. It goes into the Long March. It goes into the Great Famine. It goes into the Cultural Revolution. It goes into the Great Purge, and then it goes into his final days. And every moment, every step is just as fascinating as the previous step. It's a frightful tale. The lengths and the absolute lack of consideration for his people, his obsession with creating an army, a military, and creating an arsenal for China, trying to turn China into a superpower at the sacrifice of all the people, the millions and millions of Chinese people who suffered, who were killed, who were imprisoned, the indoctrination, the manipulation, the torture, the executions, the stabbings in the back, the persecutions. It's just absolutely terrifying, frightful. So impressed with this. And again, the ease that were brought into this narrative in this text. It reads like you would read a fiction. It's not weighed down. It's not heavy. You don't feel like, it's not like, oh, in 1952, January 1st, this happened. January 2nd, this happened. January 3rd, this happened. It's very much a well-weaved narrative, and the authors absolutely killed it on this book. It's just, I would say also, if you've never read anything about communism, you've never read anything about Mao, and you're interested, I would say this is an absolutely amazing introduction, because again, everything is so presented, well laid out, well thought out. And I started on the other side. I started off with a very academic look at this time period, which looked at the very much the intellectual side of the period, all the writers, the playwrights, the artists that were persecuted during the time period. And then I went into the personal story of someone who was in the labor camps created by Mao. So I kind of went in sort of like through the backstage entrance to get to Mao. And that was also a very interesting way of going into this. But if it comes to ease, to understand the period as a whole, to understand who he is, so that then maybe you can go and delve into more personal accounts of other people. Yeah, this is an amazing, amazing introduction. The page length is not to be scared of. Why did I take so long? Because that happens. You know, sometimes against your intentions, you just can't get through a project even if you're really, really in love with it. So the length of time that it took me to read this book is not an indication whatsoever about the ease of this book. It is so easy to read, and it is absolutely fascinating. Mao is really a horrific person. I could spend probably 40 minutes discussing this book, but as this is a wrap up, I think I will conclude there. But yeah, just like I said, really amazing. It does have it has 2 sections of some historical photos that really just really clarifies who are the people, what they looked like, what the time period, just get a feel for the time period. And that was really amazing. So that's the first section. And there's another set of pictures in the back again, which is the later half of Mao's life. But it's just, I mean, gosh, this man was a horrible, horrible person. But yeah, so The Unknown Story of Mao by Chang and by John Halliday. Seriously, an utter masterpiece of a biography. Absolutely amazing. This is making me really excited about the other nonfiction by them that I have. That is on my TBR for 2022. So yeah, super, super amazing. Absolutely amazing. On that note, though, I only read one other book in December. December proved to actually be quite busy, what with the holidays and just end of the year and just trying to finish the Mao book and everything. So I ended up reading one book in Japanese. I tend to like to finish the year in Japanese, and this will give you a little indication of what happened in 2022, which I will clarify in another video coming up quite soon. But I read the Japanese thriller called Influence, and now that I've read this and presented to you, I can finally take off this horrible, horrible movie tie-in cover, which I made a whole video dedicated to movie tie-in covers in Japan, and I'm going to replace it with the original cover that I like much more. And yeah, so here's the original cover. This is the story of Influence by the author Fumie Kondo. It's not a book that's translated into English. I don't think this would ever get translated into English. It was fun to read. I enjoyed this, but it wasn't so spectacular that I think it requires any sort of translation. It's quite, the writing is so simple. I mean, there's no ease of prose. It's not like beautiful language with like incredible descriptors. No, it's very much, she did that, he did that, she thought this, he thought this, I thought this, I thought that, I thought this, so I did this, etc. It's very straight to the point. It's just them doing. There's no description of anything. Oh, she wore a beautiful dress and unclasped this, and we were in this sort of landscape, and it doesn't describe like emotions in any sort of like I was in dread, I was in fear. There's nothing like that. It's just we get the plot and it goes through that, and it was fun, but like, you know, just a little bit underwhelming. So mediocre, middle of the line. What is it about? If you can read Japanese, but I will definitely in any case I will introduce this in a what's it called, the series of videos I've been doing where I introduce Japanese books according to your reading level. By the way, this is definitely N3 reading level, just as a preview. This is a huge N3 level book, but in any case, it's about basically the length we go for friendship, redefining the rules of friendship. So it's about 3 girls who are involved in a pretty horrific incident in their youth. One girl is being sexually abused by her grandfather, and then her friend is aware that this is happening, and even her friend's father is aware that it's happening, and they discuss it with the family, but they decide to sort of just like, oh, you know, if we're wrong, it could cause a lot of trouble, and so they kind of ignore it. And this basically creates this basis of the concept of how responsible am I for someone else's crime. So in a later incident, the friend has another friend who is almost kidnapped and assaulted, and she is able to stop the assault by stabbing the attacker, but they are afraid of, you know, getting caught, so they flee. And basically the girl who has been the one who has been sexually abused saw the incident through the window and decides to take responsibility for basically killing this man, this attacker. So it just creates this huge narrative where we go many years until their late 30s. We follow these students from basically elementary school up until the 30s, how their relationships have evolved over the years, basically the effect of these incidents in their youth, what it has done to them as adults. And yeah, just looking at the definition of friendship, as I mentioned again, it does also look at the concept of meiwaku in Japanese, which is this concept of not wanting to be a nuisance to other people, to not meddle into others' affairs, because if you're wrong, it'll cause problem, but even if you're right, it'll cause problems, and it's best just not to avoid all problems. So it creates that idea of how responsible are we for other people's problems, or rather for ignoring other people's problems? Does that make us a criminal as well? Does that also make us bad people as well? So it follows some interesting themes. I mean, it even goes into the whole concept of the problem of school bullying in Japanese schools. Once again, the lack of discipline from teachers, that's really creating these students to be, no, it's not good people basically, but having a fear of disciplining them because teachers don't think that's their role. And once again, it creates a nuisance. Like, it's better just to sort of ignore it and hope that things will work themselves out. So it definitely talks about all of that. But at the end of the day, well, I enjoyed reading this and it was fun. And then basically I read this because I read it with a friend. We decided to read a book together in the month of December, and it needed to be a book that aligned with her reading level. But yeah, it was just for that purpose. Like, this was fun. It was perfect. It was a really good book to get me back into Japanese reading, and I really hope that helps stir more Japanese reading in me in the year 2022. So yeah, so those are just the two books I read this December. Nothing too major, but I'm so happy to have gotten through that Mao, because it's absolutely incredible. And yeah, now I'm just super looking forward to starting a new year of reading. I have some really amazing books on my TBR. I have a few ideas of what I would like to do. I'm going to introduce all that into the video, into an upcoming video. But in any case, thank you so much for watching me in the year of 2021. I really appreciate everyone's comments. It's been so fun to talk to everyone. And yeah, I really hope we all are starting a really amazing journey to a new year of reading. So thanks for watching. Bye.